For 8 years, she played the devoted wife. The tearful voice on television. The trembling hands clutching his photograph. She begged the cameras, "Please, if anyone has seen Henry, just call. I need to know he's safe." The community believed her. The reporters sympathized with her. The neighbors brought casseroles and prayers. But every time she walked past the basement door, her footsteps echoed above the concrete that hid him. Her missing husband wasn't missing at all. He was right there, 20 feet beneath where she slept. And every desperate plea she made to find him was delivered while standing directly above his tomb. Henry Conrad was 52 years old when he disappeared in June 2015 from their home in Columbus, Ohio. A successful accountant with a warm smile and a generous spirit, he'd been married to Patricia Conrad for 18 years. They had no children, just a quiet life in a modest 2-story house on Maple Drive. Henry was methodical, organized, the kind of man who paid bills 2 weeks early and kept meticulous records of everything. Friends described him as kind but reserved, someone who preferred staying home with Patricia over social gatherings. His co-workers at Bradley & Associates noticed he'd become quieter in the months before he vanished, often looking tired, sometimes with dark circles under his eyes. Patricia told police he'd left for a morning jog on June 14th and never returned. His wallet was at home. His car was in the garage. His phone went straight to voicemail. Within days, search teams combed the neighborhood. Within weeks, his face was on every news station. Within months, the case went cold. Patricia Conrad, 48, was everything a grieving wife should be. She attended every search party, distributed flyers at local businesses, and appeared on news programs appealing for information. Her blonde hair was always perfectly styled, her makeup subtle but flawless. Even in grief, she maintained appearances. Henry would never just leave, she told reporters, her voice breaking at precisely the right moments. "We were happy. We had plans. Something terrible must have happened to him." She painted a picture of a devoted marriage. Sunday morning pancakes. Evening walks around the neighborhood. Quiet dinners where they discussed their dreams of traveling to Italy someday. She showed reporters their photo albums, pointing out smiling vacation pictures, anniversary celebrations, moments that seemed perfect. But what Patricia didn't mention were the arguments neighbors sometimes heard through the walls. The way Henry had confided to his brother Mark that he felt trapped. The $500,000 life insurance policy Patricia had convinced him to sign just 8 months before he disappeared. Detective Lauren Mitchell of the Columbus Police Department was assigned to Henry's case. A 14-year veteran with sharp instincts, she noticed things others missed. The way Patricia's tears seemed rehearsed. How she referred to Henry in past tense during the very first interview. The expensive purse Patricia carried to the police station, Prada, well beyond what the Conrads' joint bank account could afford. Mitchell requested financial records. What she found was troubling. Patricia had $47,000 in credit card debt Henry didn't know about. She'd been withdrawing cash from their savings for months, always in amounts just small enough to avoid triggering bank alerts. But without a body, without evidence of foul play, suspicion wasn't enough. What Detective Mitchell didn't know yet was that Patricia had been living a double life. For 2 years before Henry's disappearance, she'd been having an affair with Dylan Ross, a 32-year-old personal trainer she'd met at her gym. Dylan was everything Henry wasn't: younger, exciting, unpredictable. He drove a flashy Mustang he couldn't afford and wore designer clothes that Patricia paid for with cash withdrawals Henry never questioned. Patricia had planned to leave Henry. She'd even consulted a divorce attorney in March 2015, 3 months before he vanished. But the consultation had been devastating. Ohio was an equitable distribution state. She'd walk away with half of everything, which after Henry's debts were paid, amounted to almost nothing. The house had a mortgage. Their savings were modest. Henry's 401k couldn't be touched for years. Patricia would get maybe $80,000 after everything was divided. That wouldn't even cover 6 months of Dylan's lifestyle. Dylan liked expensive dinners, weekend trips to Chicago, the kind of life Patricia had promised him. He'd grown impatient with her excuses about why she couldn't leave yet. Their text messages, later recovered by police, told the story clearly. Dylan, When are you done playing house with the accountant? Patricia, soon baby. I promise. Just need to figure out the money. Dylan, I'm not waiting forever. There are other women who can afford me. That text arrived on May 28, 2015. 2 weeks later, Henry Conrad disappeared. The life insurance policy Patricia had convinced Henry to sign wasn't just substantial, it had a double indemnity clause. If Henry died accidentally, the payout doubled to $1 million. Suddenly, Patricia wasn't looking at $80,000 from a divorce. She was looking at a fortune. All she needed was for Henry to disappear. June 14, 2015. According to Patricia's statement to police, Henry woke up at 6:30 a.m. as usual. She made him breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. He mentioned going for a jog before work, something he'd been doing lately to lose weight. She said he kissed her goodbye at 7:15 a.m., put on his running shoes, and walked out the front door. She claimed she showered, got dressed, and left for her yoga class at 8 a.m. When she returned home at 10:30 a.m., Henry's car was still in the garage, but he wasn't home. His phone went to voicemail. She assumed he'd extended his run or stopped at a coffee shop. By 3 p.m., when Henry hadn't shown up for work and wasn't answering calls, Patricia said she started to worry. By 6 p.m., she called the police. But Detective Mitchell found inconsistencies immediately. The yoga studio had no record of Patricia attending class that morning. Security cameras at nearby businesses showed no sign of Henry jogging through the neighborhood. His running shoes, the ones Patricia claimed he'd worn, were found in the closet, clean and dry. Henry's brother Mark told police something else troubling. Henry had called him on June 13th, the night before he disappeared, sounding distressed. I found something, Henry had said. Patricia's been lying to me about money. I think she's having an affair. I'm going to confront her tomorrow morning. That conversation ended at 10:47 p.m. Mark tried calling Henry back the next day. The calls went unanswered. When Mitchell asked Patricia about the confrontation, her face remained perfectly composed. Henry never confronted me about anything, she said smoothly. We had a lovely breakfast together. Everything was normal. But everything wasn't normal. On June 18, 2015, 4 days after Henry's disappearance, Columbus police executed their first search warrant at the Conrad home. Detective Mitchell arrived with a forensic team, cadaver dogs, and a growing suspicion that Henry had never left his house alive. The search lasted nearly 8 hours. Officers photographed every room, collected Henry's laptop and phone records, and used luminol to test for blood traces. The chemical glowed faintly in the kitchen near the basement door, but the pattern was inconclusive. It could have been from a cut finger weeks earlier, or spilled cleaning products. The cadaver dogs showed interest in the basement, circling near the concrete floor and whining. But the basement had been recently renovated. Patricia explained that they'd had foundation work done in April 2015, just 2 months before Henry disappeared. The contractor had poured fresh concrete to level the floor and fix drainage issues. Do you have receipts for the work? Mitchell asked. Patricia produced them immediately. Bill Davidson, a local contractor, had invoiced $4,800 for the job. Everything looked legitimate. Mitchell made a note to interview Davidson, but without probable cause to jackhammer through newly poured concrete, the search team moved on. They found nothing definitive. No blood. No signs of struggle. No body. Patricia remained calm throughout, offering the officers coffee, answering questions with practiced patience. I just want my husband home, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Whatever you need to do, I understand. I have nothing to hide. As the forensic team packed up their equipment, Mitchell stood in the basement staring at the smooth concrete floor. Something felt wrong. The dogs had reacted. But she couldn't tear up an entire foundation on a hunch. Not yet. Months turned into years. The investigation stalled. Without a body, without concrete evidence, the case against Patricia remained purely circumstantial. Dylan Ross, the young lover, was questioned multiple times. He admitted to the affair but claimed he had no knowledge of Henry's disappearance. His alibi for June 14th was solid. He'd been teaching fitness classes at the gym from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m., with dozens of witnesses. Patricia collected the life insurance payout in 2018, 3 years after Henry's disappearance, when he was legally declared dead. $1 million deposited into her account. She quit her part-time job at a boutique, bought a new Mercedes, and moved to a luxury condo downtown. Dylan moved in with her 6 months later. To the outside world, they looked like a glamorous couple. Patricia, now 51, maintained her appearance obsessively, Botox, designer clothes, expensive jewelry. Dylan, 37, drove a new BMW and wore Rolex watches. They traveled to Europe, posted photos on social media, living the life Henry's death had funded. Detective Mitchell, now a sergeant, never stopped monitoring Patricia. She checked the case file monthly, hoping for a break. She interviewed Henry's co-workers again, re-examined phone records, and kept tabs on Patricia's spending. But years passed with no new leads. Henry's brother Mark never gave up either. He hired a private investigator in 2020, convinced Patricia had killed his brother. The investigator found nothing new, but Mark's persistence kept Henry's case in the local news. Then in September 2022, 7 years after Henry vanished, everything changed with a single phone call. The contractor who'd poured the basement concrete wanted to talk. Before we reveal what the contractor told police, if you're hooked on this case like we are, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss these shocking true crime stories. Now, let's get back to the breakthrough that changed everything. Bill Davidson was 64 years old when he walked into Columbus Police Department in September 2022. He'd been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and had months to live. What he told Sergeant Mitchell would finally crack the case wide open. "I need to get something off my chest," Davidson said, his voice raspy. "That basement job I did for Patricia Conrad back in 2015? It wasn't a normal job." Mitchell leaned forward, her pulse quickening. Davidson explained that Patricia had called him on June 14, 2015, the same day Henry disappeared, claiming they had a foundation emergency. She offered him $10,000 cash, double his usual rate, if he could start immediately and finish within 2 days. No permits. No paperwork. Just a quick pour over at the problem area in the basement. When Davidson arrived on June 15th, Patricia had already excavated a section of the basement floor herself. The hole was roughly 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 3 feet deep. She told him there'd been a sewage leak and she needed it covered immediately. "The thing is," Davidson continued, "there was no sewage smell. No water damage. Nothing that would require emergency concrete work. And the hole, it was too perfect. Too rectangular. Like someone had measured it." He'd had a bad feeling, but $10,000 cash was hard to refuse. He poured the concrete on June 16th, smoothed it over, and left. Patricia paid him entirely in $100 bills. "I convinced myself it was nothing," Davidson said, tears in his eyes. "But when I saw on the news that her husband disappeared the same weekend I did that job, I knew. I've known for 7 years, and I did nothing." Now, finally, Mitchell had her probable cause. With Davidson's statement, Mitchell obtained a warrant to excavate the Conrad basement. But before the dig began, she needed to answer one crucial question. How did Patricia, a 48-year-old woman with no construction experience, dig a 6-foot-long hole through concrete and soil by herself? The answer came from phone records Mitchell had reviewed years earlier but hadn't fully understood. On June 14, 2015, between 8:30 a.m. and 11 a.m., Patricia had exchanged 17 text messages with Dylan Ross. Mitchell obtained a warrant to retrieve deleted messages from Dylan's old phone, stored by his service provider. What they found was damning. "Patricia, it's done. He's in the basement. I need you here now." Dylan, Jesus Christ, Patricia. This wasn't the plan. The plan changed. He found the bank statements. He was going to divorce me. I had no choice. Get here. Dylan had arrived at the Conrad home at 11:47 a.m. on June 14th, captured on a neighbor's security camera that Mitchell had reviewed back in 2015 but hadn't connected at the time. He told police back then he was just visiting Patricia to comfort her, during Henry's disappearance. Now, the timeline made sickening sense. Dylan had helped Patricia dig the grave. They'd worked through the night of June 14th into June 15th, breaking through the old concrete basement floor with sledgehammers and a rented jackhammer. Receipts later found showed Dylan had rented the equipment from a Home Depot 40 miles away, paying cash. Henry's body, wrapped in plastic sheeting, had been placed in the hole they'd dug together. Then Patricia called Davidson with her emergency foundation story, and Dylan disappeared from the property before the contractor arrived. He'd been there the whole time. Not just her lover, her accomplice. When Sergeant Mitchell arrived at 2847 Maple Drive on October 3, 2022, with excavation equipment and a forensic team, she found something that made her stomach drop. The house was gone. In its place stood a completely new construction, modern siding, fresh landscaping, a different layout. A young couple, the Hendersons, answered the door looking confused when Mitchell showed her badge. "We bought this property in 2019, Mrs. Henderson explained. It was a teardown. The previous house had severe fire damage." Mitchell's jaw tightened. She pulled the property records immediately. On March 8, 2018, 6 months after Patricia collected the life insurance money, the Conrad home had caught fire. The Columbus Fire Department report listed the cause as electrical malfunction in the basement. The fire had started around 2 a.m. when no one was home. Patricia had already moved out 3 weeks earlier. The blaze hadn't destroyed the entire structure, but it had caused enough damage that Patricia sold the property to a developer for $95,000, far below market value for a quick sale. The developer demolished what remained and built the new house the Hendersons now owned. Mitchell realized immediately what Patricia had done. She tried to destroy the evidence. If the basement concrete had been damaged or broken apart during the fire or demolition, Henry's remains could have been scattered, destroyed, or simply built over without anyone knowing. But Patricia had made one critical miscalculation. The Hendersons told Mitchell that when the foundation was poured for their new house, the construction crew had left a section of the old basement floor intact. It was solid enough to build on and saved the developer money. That section was directly where Davidson had poured concrete in June 2015. Henry might still be recoverable. On October 5, 2022, with the Hendersons' permission and a court order, the excavation began. Ground-penetrating radar had confirmed an anomaly beneath the preserved section of old concrete. Something dense, roughly the size and shape of a human body. Forensic archaeologists worked carefully, using jackhammers to break through the outer concrete layer, then switching to hand tools as they got closer. News vans lined Maple Drive. Neighbors stood on their porches watching. Henry's brother Mark stood behind the police tape, his hands clasped in prayer. At 3:47 p.m., they found plastic sheeting. Black, thick, industrial grade. The same type Patricia and Dylan had purchased from a hardware store in June 2015, receipts Mitchell had uncovered during her review of their credit card statements. By 6:15 p.m., they'd uncovered skeletal remains. A full skeleton, positioned face-up, still wearing the remnants of pajama pants and a t-shirt. A wedding ring on the left hand. Dental records would later confirm what everyone already knew. Henry Conrad had been buried under his own basement for 7 years, 2 months, and 21 days. The medical examiner found a fractured skull, blunt force trauma to the back of the head. The injury was consistent with being struck by a heavy object, possibly while the victim was unaware. There were also fractures to the hyoid bone in the throat, suggesting strangulation. Patricia hadn't just killed Henry in a moment of panic. She'd beaten him, then strangled him to make sure he was dead. At 8:32 p.m., as the sun set over Columbus, Patricia Conrad was arrested at her luxury condo. Dylan Ross was taken into custody simultaneously at the gym where he worked. Both were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. Patricia Conrad's trial began in March 2023 at the Franklin County Courthouse. She pleaded not guilty, claiming self-defense. Her attorney argued that Henry had attacked her during their confrontation about the affair, and she'd struck him with a lamp in fear for her life. But the prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Michael Torres, dismantled her story piece by piece. The deleted text messages between Patricia and Dylan proved premeditation. The $10,000 cash payment to the contractor. The jackhammer rental. The life insurance policy signed 8 months before Henry's death. The fire that conveniently destroyed evidence. Every detail painted a picture of cold, calculated murder. Dylan Ross had already taken a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against Patricia, he received a reduced sentence of 15 years for accessory to murder and conspiracy. On the stand, he described how Patricia had called him that morning in a panic, claiming Henry had discovered everything and was going to divorce her. She said she hit him with a cast-iron skillet while he was making coffee. Dylan testified, unable to meet Patricia's eyes. He fell. She panicked. Then she finished it. She strangled him to make sure he wouldn't wake up. The most damning evidence came from the contractor, Bill Davidson, who died 2 months before the trial but had given a videotaped deposition. His testimony about the suspicious burial site, the cash payment, and Patricia's urgency sealed her fate. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of conspiracy. Guilty of insurance fraud. Patricia showed no emotion as the verdict was read. Behind her, Henry's brother Mark collapsed into his seat, sobbing. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. If you love a good mystery and want to dive deep into gripping crime stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join us every day for new episodes full of twists, turns, and chilling revelations. Don't forget to click the bell so you never miss a thrilling moment. Who do you think of Patricia? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and let's unravel the mystery together.